Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update on Sierra Madre Gold and Silver. Sierra Madre is traded on the TSXV under the ticker SM and on the OTCQX under the ticker SMDRF. And I'm joined today with the president and CEO of Sierra Madre Gold and Silver, Alex Langer. And Alex, it's great to get you back on the show. We had talked at the end of April, but since then you've had a flurry of news. So we're going to try to fit a lot into this interview. And the first thing I want to touch on is the Q1 2025 financials. You put those out to the market on May 7th, so about a month ago. We just haven't had a chance to dig into them together. And so just from a high level on the financial side, a lot of good metrics here. You can see it's really the first quarter that you've been up and running more full steam ahead with your plant at 500 tons per day plus. But what are the key metrics that you want to give people from a financial side as far as the first quarter?
Yeah, thanks, Chad. First off, thanks so much for having me back. Always pleasure to chat. Yeah, so our quarter one came out and we were really happy. Some of the big points were cash flow positive. We made 535,000 US in quarter one, which was up from quarter four where we were test mining. Revenues were again higher. We produced about 165,000 equivalent ounces of silver, and our all-in sustaining cost was just under $29 per ounce of silver equivalent. So as you can see, those numbers from quarter four to quarter one have gone down, and we are expecting, I guess, aggressive revenue growth in sales for quarter two, quarter three, and quarter four of this year. So we're still catching up on underground development, which adds to our costs. We've also been renting quite a bit of equipment, so we've been able to buy some of that. I think we bought about 350,000 US worth of equipment in quarter one. Our plan is to buy about the same amount in quarter two. So as we continue to buy equipment, those cash costs come down. As we continue to do our development, things continue to go up. But I think the big thing is, yeah, we were profitable in our first quarter commercial production, which is, I think, a fairly rare point for a company just starting operations.
Yeah, it's nice to see. We've seen other companies do the reverse of that and gradually start losing money as they went into production. So nice to see your ramp up has gone well and you're well into commercial production now. But obviously, it's an ongoing process, not an event. And so underground, there's always development work that needs to be done. Maybe just speak to the health of the operations at Lagatara and how things are going as far as opening up more stopes and what we can expect kind of from a production profile from Lagatara looking ahead.
Yeah, so we don't have a feasibility study or a PEA, so we can't speak too much on what our projections will be. We're not giving any guidance on numbers and things like that per se. However, we are expecting improvements on all metrics moving forward. So we're still catching up in development. It's probably going to take at least another 6 to 7 months to get to a point where we have every working phase we're comfortable working on. Same with, I know we'll get into it in a little bit, but the Coloso portion of our mine coming online as well. So there is a lot of work that we're continuing to do. And again, just catching up. We had guided to the market originally that we had planned to probably be in production kind of July of this year. So the fact that we were ahead of that by almost 11, 12 months and able to bring in cash flows, which was the big thing, we're still catching up on all of that. So if we hadn't started production, we'd probably be caught up on all our underground development. But the fact that we went to cash flows earlier and started production has allowed us not to raise more capital and be able to do everything we wanted out of capital, including that underground development. So it was a decision we made when silver was at 24 bucks. And the one thing that's really, really put us on side, which has been amazing, is the silver and gold price for the last little while here. So it's been wonderful. You know, we had kind of hoped we'd see these prices, but it's been really, really great in terms of operations and revenues for the company.
Well, and let's also talk about that gold is a nice contributor along with the silver. I think a lot of people know that you have the silver, but you're doing pretty good with the gold price where it is too. So break down the balance. I think you had over 70,000 ounces of silver and 1,000 ounces of gold. But what's the ratio you anticipate in a rough sense continuing to mine between the silver and the gold, the balance between the two?
Yeah, so traditionally this mine was, 65, 35 silver to gold. With the huge increase in the price of gold over the last year and a bit, silver's been a bit of a laggard in that sense. So the equivalent ounces have actually produced more revenues on the gold side, just a little bit more. It was about 2.34 million in silver and about 2.8 million US, these are all US numbers, in gold. So a little bit of a difference there. So it's about 55-45 as it stands right now. Now that number will come together. I expect it to be closer to 50-50 now that silver's finally catching up. The last time this mine was in operation, silver was 50 to 1 in terms of the ratio, and now we're 100 to 1 gold silver ratio. So traditionally it's been more of a silver mine, but in today's sense, gold price is kind of overlapped it for the time being. I do expect silver to catch up. The other thing is when Coloso does come online, it's about 1.7 times higher grade in silver. So we will start to see silver revenues increase as well. So it'll go back to being a silver mine, but I project moving forward 60% silver, 40% gold is probably the right mix, which is great. So we get the upside of silver and the upside of gold, and we get paid out in the same concentrate. So for us, on the operation side, it doesn't matter. Me, as an investor, I do like silver. So it's nice to see those silver numbers coming up as well.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to get their feelings hurt with you producing gold at these high prices. But yeah, I think the torque to silver is why people are more interested in the story. And you brought up that Coloso is now mine number 2 in the complex. You started some underground mining there, and you announced that back on April the 29th to the market. Now, we had kind of teased this idea in our last discussion, Alex, where we said that down the road, you think that Coloso could come online and start contributing. So now that you're doing underground mining, how long before it starts showing up in the production profile? Will any of that make it into Q2, or will that be more of a Q3 thing?
It's more into Q3, but there will be some here in the last couple last couple of weeks of Q2. So in essence, what we've done is we've stockpiled a really good amount of material. Again, we got to catch up in development over at Coloso. Coloso is about 4 kilometers away from Lagatara. It's a big brand new kind of mine. First Majestic developed in 2013, 2014. So a really large portal. There's power. There's everything you need in terms of infrastructure. It is literally a brand new mine, kind of 10 years old. So for us to get back in there made a lot of sense. And we touched on the grade. The grade is about 1.7 times higher on the silver side and actually 1.2 times higher on the gold side. So better grades throughout. So we kind of guided that we would start to blend that material with the Lagatara material. And we've started to do that, which is great. We're starting slowly. We're going to do, start at 20 tons per day, move that up to 50 tons per day, probably by the end of this month. And then hopefully do 100 tons per day in the fall, and then about 150 tons per day by the end of the year. So that's kind of the benchmarks we set for ourselves in terms of production. So if I go to site, I was there actually about a week and a half ago. There's a huge stockpile of material from Coloso that's starting to build, and we've just started to process some of that material, and it's gone really well. So what's great about higher grade material is your recoveries are better, and it also, your costs maintain the same, and you're getting better recoveries, and you're getting more silver and gold coming out in your concentrate. So it is a no-brainer for us to get that online, and it's gone really well. So we're going to continue to work on the development over there to bring in this higher grade material. But I expect to see, last 2 weeks here of June, and then moving into Q3, that we'll really start to see those numbers increase as more and more material from Coloso gets put through the mill and plant.
Well, and just a follow-up on it, I actually had a couple people email me, Alex, curious about that. That there's a second mine here, but there's only so much plant capacity. But to the point you made, if you have higher grade material, your recoveries go up, your costs go down, and you should have more output just because of the higher grade. But there's not a way to really add this material to the Lagatara material and have substantially more output until you increase the mill size, right? So maybe walk people through that mental exercise. I know you can't give guidance, but just what to expect on the production, and what the future would look like for expansion, what kind of equipment you need to do to be able to run both mines through at a higher clip.
Perfect. Yeah. So by the end of the year, we'd like to have, as I mentioned, about a third of the material coming from Coloso and about 2/3 coming from Lagatara. So we think that blend is really close to that 220 gram equivalent ounce number that we have within the resource model, which is great. Nice high grade, especially today's prices should go well. But you're right. The big constraint is going to be the mill and the processing capacity. Right now, the mill is actually rated for about 516 tons per day. But we run it, on average about 500 tons per day for whatever weather delays and, maintenance work and things like that. So we're getting about 500 tons per day of capacity in the mill. Now, to increase that capacity isn't a huge capital outlay. The biggest bottleneck right now is the ball mills. We have 3 ball mills. 2 of them are one's about 220 tons per day. The other one's about 200. And then we have a smaller one that's about 80 to 90 tons per day. So the idea is to add a 4th ball mill. It would cost about $1 million, call it $1.5 million US fully installed. And that would be about a 400 ton per day ball mill. There's actually space for it. There was a fourth ball mill that doesn't work. There's power ready to go. We would install that, and that would alleviate the bottleneck on the grinding circuit. The crushing circuit's actually good for 640 tons per day. So right away, we'd be able to process more material. That would add an extra 20% ish by just adding another ball mill. So we haven't announced anything. We're still kind of working through those numbers. Again, we do need to catch up on our development, but for a relatively low cost, about $1.5 million US, we should be able to increase to about 640 tons per day. And from what we've been mining traditionally already at Lagatara, 500 tons per day is not an issue. Plus 150 from Coloso gives you kind of that 640, 650 number right away. So there's a little bit of method to our madness and what we've been thinking. And that would be step one. Now to go beyond 640, 650 tons per day, we would have to add a secondary cone crusher. Again, not a huge capital outlay, probably even less than a ball mill. That would get us up to about 750. And then to get to 1,000 tons per day, which we feel quite confident we'll be able to do by 2027, that would be, again, another million or so, and just another jaw crusher. So again, there's space for it, power. It's just a matter of kind of working the circuitry a little bit and where the conveyor belts go and how you move the circuit around. But the ball mill capacity would be up to 900 or 1,000. The jaw crusher will be way above that. And the flotation tanks are already good for 1,200 tons per day. So again, not a huge amount of capital, some we feel we can do out of cash flows as those numbers continue to build. So we can get this thing up to about 1,000 tons per day, hopefully by 2027. That's kind of the goal we've earmarked for the time being.
Okay, appreciate you walking us through the pathway forward there to increasing the plant size and the equipment that would be needed. There was a line that you put in the press release on June the 5th, which deals with the extension to the first Majestic loan. And in there, you mentioned this amendment is expected to provide flexibility for Sierra Madre to potentially increase plant and mill capacity at our Lagatara mine. And somebody sent a question saying, what does it mean if they could potentially increase it? But is that what you're talking about? Is that it just depends on the equipment that you put in as far as the ball mills and the crushers? That's the longer range plan?
Exactly. So it's been great. First Majestic's by far our largest shareholder. They've been incredible supporters of us. They gave us a $5 million US loan originally to finish the last bit of CapEx that let us get into production, at least test mining last June. So we had originally signed a 2-year loan, 15% interest, payback early, no penalties. We're just paying interest on that right now. So it's $2,500 a month, which is really, really straightforward. And they've been amazing. So we had asked them if we could extend it a year, just to give us a bit of flexibility. They had no problem with that, which was great. What this gives us now is we have a 2-year runway, which our cash flows are starting to generate, to perhaps chat about or put into process what I had discussed earlier in trying to increase throughput in the mill, whether it's ball mills, whether it's the jaw crushers or cone crushers. But it gives us flexibility if we decide and if it makes sense to purchase that equipment maybe a little bit sooner than we had planned, which is really, really great. So, even for them being our largest shareholder, seeing us increase throughput, lowering our costs all at the same time, it just gives us flexibility to do that a little bit earlier. We're very cognizant of that loan. I would have never taken out that loan if I didn't feel 100% confident we'd be able to repay that. And this just gives us a bit of flexibility to perhaps increase our throughput quicker than we had originally planned, and also for exploration. Again, we had purchased this mine on the basis of the exploration potential, and we really want to get out there and start to, at least do some further field work or some trenching, and drilling again is what we really want to do. So this gives us a bit more flexibility with our capital and our cash position to, move those things a little bit further ahead, which is great.
Well, I'm glad you unpacked that, Alex, because there were some people that were reading it as a negative that, hey, maybe you had financial concerns, but really it's more of a situation where you ask your partner, First Majestic, hey, can we just extend it? Because we'd like to grow. We'd like to explore. We'd like to increase the mill size. We'd like to, get new equipment. So I think it's more of a growth initiative than it is a concern about capital. So I appreciate you unpacking that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
So you talked about exploration. Let's quickly touch on that. Again, the production here is fantastic, especially these metals prices, but the district scale land package, the bigger vision is there's a lot of other targets that you can get to. You've got the Mina de Agua and the Veda Rica, you've got the Animus project, El Rincon. There's all these exciting exploration targets. So why don't you maybe spend a minute on the big picture vision of some of these targets you'd like to get to first?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, just to remind everyone, we have a whole district. The Lagatara District was, I think it was the largest producer of gold and silver in the late 1700s, 1780s, all the way through for a good 50, 60-year chunk, which is quite amazing. So we have a whole district. It's about 25,000 hectares. It's very rare for a junior of our size to have a whole district. Usually it would be broken up, honestly, 4 or 5 different juniors. The fact that it was held by First Majestic, they were able to pay the fee, which was over $1 million US just to hold the land and taxes on an annual basis. Again, a junior probably wouldn't be able to hold that just because the costs were so high, especially when silver wasn't quite where it is today. So rare that we do have this huge land package. You brought it up before. There's 8 former mines at site. 2 of them are now in production, Coloso and Lagatara, but there's some other ones that are really, really interesting for us. In particular, Mina de Agua and El Rincon. Mina de Agua had 10,000 employees at one point, shut down in 1910. They got a little bit too deep, but a huge major mine, and that's located about 2 kilometers from Lagatara, so very, very close. And then the other one is El Rincon. El Rincon shut down in 1935. Again, they got a little bit too deep and it flooded. However, the previous 20 years of production, actually, the average head grade was 6.5 grams gold and 860 grams silver. So incredible grades. They're averaged that at 100 tons per day for the last 20 years of production from 1915 to 1935. So that's the prize. And, we're working through that right now. We've identified about 60 kilometers of vein material at surface that has potential, and we want to go explore. So the whole plan is to use these cash flows to go explore the East District where Mina de Agua and El Rincon are. And we think we could come up with some pretty exciting numbers in the not too distant future. So again, managing cash flows, managing that loan, making sure that we have the flexibility to increase capacity of the mill and also hopefully start some of this exploration work in the new year.
Well, and just a quick follow-up on another target. I know that next to the Coloso mine is the old historic Nazareno mine, and you'd mentioned in a previous discussion that's some pretty material too. Any interest in going back in there and doing some exploration?
You know what? That could happen relatively quickly as well. So Nazareno is it connected to Coloso from an underground tunnel? It's a fairly long tunnel. It's about 500 meters that First Majestic had put in as well. What's great about Nazareno is its widths are up to 30 meters. So really, really thick mineralized material there. So the plan is once we do get up to plant capacity up to 1,000 tons per day, we're going to need a lot of material. And I think Nazareno, Los Angeles area is where that's going to come from. So with that amount of material and those thick of veins, a blast would give us, 2 to 3 months of production. Like it's just crazy, crazy amounts. It is a little bit lower grade than Coloso Lagatara, but just the amount of material we have there and the low mining costs makes a lot of sense. So if we do get up to, 1,000 tons per day, that's where the other material will come from. So that'd be kind of the third mine coming online, which would be kind of neat. And it's connected to Coloso all underground. So that's nearer term than, definitely some of the other ones, but all within hopefully the production profile by 2027.
Okay, exciting. Could be a third area of pulling ore and feeding the beast at the mill. So we'll definitely keep tabs on that target as well. Just a final thought, Alex, as far as how you want people to look at Sierra Madre Gold and Silver looking forward, as far as compared to your peers and where you're positioned in the sector, where you're positioned in this precious metal cycle. How do you want people to think of Sierra Madre Gold and Silver?
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold. So first off, we are a producing company. We are cash flow positive. Every dollar increase in the price of silver, every $10 increase in the price of gold is material for us, which is amazing. So you're getting the benefits of higher metal prices instantaneously in terms of our revenues, which is great. And then also we are an exploration company at the heart. So we have this incredible land package, a whole district that was one of the largest producer of silver and gold in Mexico for a very, very long time. No real modern exploration, especially in the East District since the mid 1900s. So the ability to hopefully generate some exciting news. So minimize downside risk because we are cash flow positive. We do have the ability to do everything I discussed out of cash flows. And yeah, we're in a wonderful, wonderful spot. And I think we've kind of proven the concept over the last little while here. And I think we'll continue to do so. So yeah, I think setting expectations and delivering is kind of what we've done. And hopefully if everything continues to go well, we'll do just that.
Well, it's been a pleasure to watch all the milestones achieved, really ahead of schedule, far ahead of schedule, I would say, in mining terms, because usually things are behind schedule. So you've done a great bang up job, your whole team, Alex. And so congratulations on the efficient and profitable ramp up into commercial production. We'll be looking for those Q2 numbers not too far into the future. Good luck getting on the ground with the exploration work. And for those of you listening into the call, if you want to follow along with all the news flow out of Sierra Madre, definitely click on the link below in the show notes. It takes you right over to the company website, straight to their news section where you can sign up for updates, have them hit your email inbox, or just follow along with the news as it hits the wires. Alex, keep us posted. We'll get you back on for an update soon. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Chad.